Vikram Desai had everything: wealth, power, success. But as he stepped out of his luxury car on the night of his biggest business deal, he saw something that would stop his world in its tracks. There, on the cold pavement, sat the woman who had once raised him like a mother, now reduced to begging for spare change. His heart sank. What had happened to her? And how had he, the man who owed her everything, let this happen? This was a moment that would change his life forever. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Vikram Desai had just finished sealing the biggest business deal of his life. His heart raced with excitement as he stepped out of his luxury car, ready to head to a celebration at a 5-star hotel. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he held his phone in one hand, buzzing with congratulatory messages from friends and colleagues. Everything seemed perfect. He had it all: wealth, power, respect, and success. To the world, Vikram was a man who had everything most could only dream of. As his driver carefully navigated the streets of the city, Vikram's thoughts raced. His mind was preoccupied with thoughts of the future, new ventures, investments, and the lavish celebration awaiting him. He leaned back in his seat, momentarily letting the feeling of accomplishment wash over him. The future was his, and nothing could take it away. As the car stopped at a red light, Vikram's thoughts were interrupted by a strange, unsettling feeling. Something caught his eye from the corner of the street. It was a woman sitting on the pavement. She was elderly, frail, wrapped in a thin, worn shawl and holding a plastic bowl in her lap. She looked like she had been there for hours, maybe days. Her head was bowed low, and her hands trembled as she asked passers-by for coins. The scene seemed ordinary, yet something about it tugged at Vikram's heart. He squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The woman's face looked familiar, but it didn't register at first. The noise of the street faded in the background as he leaned closer, peering through the tinted windows of the car. His chest tightened, his heartbeat quickened, and a wave of emotion crashed over him. There, in front of him, was a face he hadn't seen in years, the face of the woman who had raised him. He whispered her name under his breath, as if saying it out loud would make it all real. "Nanny," he muttered, his voice cracking. Vikram was stunned. The world seemed to stop around him. He had been too busy chasing success, too wrapped up in his own life, to even consider the possibility of something like this. He had everything: wealth, status, and a future full of promise. Yet the woman who had once given him all her love and care was now reduced to begging on the streets. Memories rushed back in an instant. Nanny had been more than a caretaker to Vikram. She had been a mother to him. When his parents were too busy with their careers, Nanny had stepped in. She had raised him with love, fed him when he was hungry, tucked him in at night, and comforted him when he was sad. She had been his protector, his teacher, and his friend. In his childhood, Vikram had always felt safe in her presence. She was his anchor in a world that often felt uncertain. But now, as he looked at her sitting on the pavement, that safety seemed like a distant memory. How had things gotten so bad? How had the woman who once held him close now been forgotten by the world? Vikram's heart sank. He knew he couldn't just drive past her. He couldn't ignore the woman who had given him everything when he had nothing. His fingers tightened around the door handle of the car, and without a second thought, he threw open the door and rushed out into the street. The honking of horns and the flashes of cameras from nearby pedestrians seemed to disappear as he ran toward her. He barely noticed the chaos around him, his mind only focused on getting to her. He knelt beside her, his knees hitting the cold pavement, his heart racing with a mix of guilt, sadness, and longing. Nanny's eyes, cloudy with age and hardship, slowly lifted to meet his. For a moment there was confusion in her gaze, as if she didn't recognize him. Then, as if a light bulb went off in her mind, recognition flickered in her eyes. She gasped, her voice trembling. "Arvind, is it really you?" Vikram's heart clenched. He had forgotten how much he missed her voice. It was a sound from his childhood, a sound that reminded him of a time when life was simpler. He could barely hold back his tears as he whispered, "Nanny, what happened to you?" For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The noise of the bustling street, the people who had gathered to watch, the cameras clicking in the distance, and it all faded away. In that moment, it was just the two of them, sitting on the pavement, separated by years of silence, yet bound by a bond that had never truly broken. Nanny's eyes filled with tears as she spoke, her voice shaking with emotion. "Life happened, Arvind," she said softly. "Your family moved abroad and I lost everything. I lost my job, my home, my dignity. The world left me behind." Vikram felt his throat tighten as he listened. The weight of her words hit him hard. She had been there for him when he had nothing, but now she had nothing. How had he not known? How had he been so wrapped up in his own life that he hadn't noticed her suffering? The pain of it all was overwhelming. But as Vikram looked at her, something stirred inside him. This wasn't just about guilt. This was about love, the love she had given him, and the love he had to give her in return. He took a deep breath, wiping away a tear that threatened to fall. "Nanny," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I promise you this is not how it ends. You won't be here anymore. I'll take care of you. You'll never be alone again." Vikram's heart was set. There was no going back now. He was going to bring Nanny home, no matter what it took. Vikram's knees trembled as he sat next to Nanny on the cold pavement. His heart pounded in his chest, and for the first time in years he felt a deep sense of vulnerability. Here he was, the man who had everything: power, money, success. Yet in this moment he felt like a child again, full of guilt and regret. He had spent so many years chasing his dreams, building his empire, and yet he had forgotten the one person who had always been there for him when he had nothing. Nanny's face, wrinkled and worn by the years, still held a warmth Vikram recognized instantly. Her eyes, although tired and weary, had the same kindness they always had. She had raised him when his parents were too busy to give him the attention he needed. She had been his mother, his caregiver, his protector. And now, here she was, sitting on the street with nothing but a plastic bowl in her hands, begging for spare change from strangers. The contrast was overwhelming. "Nanny," Vikram whispered again, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you reach out? I should have been there for you." Nanny's frail hands clutched the edges of the bowl in her lap. She shook, her head slowly, as if the years of hardship had taken all her strength. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I didn't want to bother you, Beta. You had your life. You were building your future. I didn't want to be a burden." Vikram's heart shattered at her words. How could she ever think she was a burden to him? Nanny had given him everything, and now he was the one who had failed her. How could he have been so blind, so caught up in his own world, that he hadn't seen the pain she was going through? "You were never a burden," Vikram said firmly, his voice filled with emotion. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. You raised me with love and care. How could I forget that?" Nanny's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "Life is strange, Beta," she said softly. "People forget the ones who took care of them once they rise. They move on, and those who were once important become nothing more than memories." Vikram's throat tightened as he listened to her words. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Nanny, the woman who had always put him first, had been forgotten by the world. She had been left behind, and now all she had was the street and a small bowl to collect the meager coins people dropped. "I'm sorry," Vikram whispered. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you, but you're not alone anymore. I'll take care of you, I promise." Nanny smiled faintly, but it was a smile filled with sadness. "You've done enough, Beta," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm just glad you're doing well." Vikram felt a surge of guilt and love for the woman who had shaped his life. He couldn't let her live like this on the streets, forgotten by everyone. He couldn't let her die in a place where no one cared for her. He had to make things right, no matter what, without another word. Vikram stood up and gently helped Nanny to her feet. She was so frail, so weak. It hurt him to see her like this. Her hands shook as she tried to steady herself, but Vikram supported her, refusing to let go. "We're going home, Nanny," Vikram said with determination. "You're coming with me. You'll never have to beg again. I'll make sure you have everything you need." Nanny hesitated for a moment, her eyes filled with doubt. "I don't want pity, Beta," she said quietly. "I don't want to be a burden to you." "This isn't pity," Vikram said firmly, his voice filled with warmth. "This is me repaying you for all the love you gave me when I had nothing. This is me giving you the life you deserve." Vikram helped Nanny into the backseat of his luxury car, making sure she was comfortable. The driver, who had been silently watching the scene unfold, didn't say a word. He simply started the car and drove off. The streets were busy, the sounds of the city echoing around them, but inside the car there was only silence. It was a silence filled with emotions too big for words. As the car moved through the city, Vikram glanced at Nanny, who was clutching his jacket close to her chest. She looked so fragile, so vulnerable, and it broke his heart. He remembered how she used to comfort him when he was scared or upset, how she would hold him close and tell him everything would be okay. Now, he was the one who had to comfort her. "Do you remember," Vikram said softly, "how you used to sneak milados before dinner, even though your daughter would scold you every time?" Nanny smiled faintly, her eyes lighting up at the memory. "Yes," she said, her voice weak but filled with warmth. "Your mother would always get upset, but I couldn't resist seeing you so happy." Vikram chuckled softly, feeling the weight of the years lift just a little. "I still remember how much I loved those lados. You were always my little sunshine," Nanny said, her voice filled with tenderness. "Even when things were tough, you always brought joy into my life." Vikram looked at her, his eyes filled with emotion. "And you were always my light, Nanny. You showed me what love is, what it means to care for someone without expecting anything in return." They drove in silence for a while, the memories of the past flooding Vikram's mind. He had everything now, but nothing could replace the love and care Nanny had given him. He realized that he had spent so much time focusing on building his empire. He had forgotten the one person who had built him into the man he was today. As the car pulled up to Vikram's mansion, the staff stood in surprise. They hadn't seen Nanny before, and they didn't understand what was happening. But when they saw Vikram gently helping the frail woman out of the car, their confusion turned to respect. They didn't question him. They simply followed his orders. "Prepare the guest room on the top floor," Vikram told his house manager, "and call the doctor." As Vikram guided Nanny into the house, he couldn't help but feel that for the first time in a long time, he had finally done something right. He had brought Nanny home. And this time, she would never be forgotten again. The days that followed Nanny's arrival at Vikram's mansion were nothing like what he had expected. The once bustling, fast-paced life he had grown used to, filled with business meetings, deadlines, and luxury, felt distant. The mansion that had once felt like a symbol of his success now felt cold and empty without Nanny's presence. He had everything, but in that moment, he realized that nothing compared to the warmth of the woman who had cared for him like a mother. The first night she spent at the mansion, Vikram sat by her side, just watching her sleep. The doctor had assured him that with proper care, rest, and nourishment, Nanny would recover, but the sight of her frail body and tired eyes weighed heavily on his heart. It was hard for Vikram to imagine that this was the same woman who had once run around the house making him laugh, telling him stories, and making him feel safe. Now she was a shadow of the person she used to be, and it tore him apart. Vikram stayed with her that entire night. He didn't want her to feel alone. She had been alone for so long, and now that he had the chance to be there for her, he wasn't going to let her feel abandoned again. The next morning, when the sun rose and the house came to life with the sounds of servants preparing breakfast, Vikram was still sitting beside her, watching her sleep peacefully. The change in him was undeniable. The man who had once been consumed by ambition and success had now found a new purpose: to care for the woman who had raised him, who had given him everything when he had nothing. As the weeks passed, Vikram's life began to revolve around Nanny's care. He hired a private nurse, a team of specialists, and made sure she had everything she needed. Her room was filled with fresh flowers, warm blankets, and the soft, comforting sounds of music that she loved. He visited her every morning before work, sitting with her while she sipped her tea, and then he would spend his evenings telling her about his day. He found joy in these small moments, the simple conversations they shared over a cup of tea, the laughter they exchanged when they recalled old memories. But it wasn't just the physical care that Vikram provided. It was the emotional support that made all the difference. He realized that Nanny had never asked for anything in return for the love she gave him. All those years she had cared for him without expecting anything. And now, he wanted to give her that same unconditional love. Every evening, he would sit beside her, holding her hand, listening to her stories about the past. He cherished these moments, for they reminded him of the love he had once taken for granted. One evening, after they had shared a quiet dinner together, Vikram looked at Nanny and realized just how much his heart had changed. He had always been so focused on building his empire, on achieving success. But now, he understood what true wealth really was. It wasn't in the numbers on a bank statement or the size of a mansion. True wealth was in love, in the people who had stood by you through thick and thin, in the bonds that couldn't be broken by time or circumstance. "Nanny," Vikram said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "I've been so focused on my success, my business, that I forgot what really matters. I forgot about you. I forgot about the person who made me who I am. And now I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you never feel alone again." Nanny looked at him, her tired eyes glistening with tears. "You've already done more than enough, Beta," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I never wanted anything in return, just knowing that you're doing well, that you've become the man I always knew you could be. That's all I ever wanted." Vikram shook his head, his throat tight with emotion. "No, Nanny," he said, his voice trembling. "You gave me everything, when I had nothing. You were there when no one else was. I can never repay you for that, but I will try. I'll make sure you have everything you need, and I'll spend every moment I have left making sure you know how much you mean to me." It was in that moment, sitting together in the warmth of his mansion, that Vikram realized something powerful. He had been living in a world where everything was measured by success and material wealth. But now, he saw that the true measure of a person's life was not in their achievements, but in the love they shared with others. He realized that Nanny had given him a gift that no amount of money could ever buy, the gift of unconditional love. As Vikram continued to care for Nanny, his life began to change in ways he had never expected. He found himself slowing down, taking time to appreciate the small moments, the sound of laughter in the house, the joy of spending time with someone he loved, the warmth of a home filled with kindness. He had everything he had ever dreamed of, but now he understood that it wasn't the wealth or the success that mattered most. It was the people in his life, the relationships he had, and the love that flowed freely between them. Vikram's heart had shifted. He had always been focused on building an empire, but now he was focused on building something far more valuable, a life full of love, gratitude, and the realization that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is simply remember the ones who loved them when they had nothing. He had found his true calling, not in the boardrooms or the deals he made, but in the simple act of loving and caring for the woman who had given him everything. And for the first time, Vikram felt truly at peace. The days passed quietly, but for Vikram, each day spent with Nanny felt like a blessing. He had come to understand that the world he had built with his wealth and success meant little without the love and care he had received from the one person who had never asked for anything in return. Nanny had been the foundation of his childhood, and now he was doing everything he could to ensure she lived the rest of her days in comfort and peace. Vikram spent hours by her side, talking, reminiscing, and listening to her stories. It was during these moments that he realized how much he had missed out on in his pursuit of success. He had been too focused on climbing the corporate ladder, too consumed by his own ambitions to recognize the importance of the relationships that had shaped him. Now he saw that true fulfillment didn't come from boardrooms or financial achievements. It came from love. The love that Nanny had shown him all those years. One afternoon, while sitting together in the garden of Vikram's mansion, Nanny looked at him with a soft, tired smile. "Beta," she said gently, "you've done so much for me already. I don't need anything else." Vikram shook his head, his heart aching. "You've given me everything, Nanny. You've always been there for me, and now it's my turn to take care of you." Nanny reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You've already given me the greatest gift in your love. That's all I ever needed." But Vikram wasn't satisfied yet. There was still something he needed to do. Something that would honor Nanny in a way that words alone couldn't express. He knew what he had to do, and he was determined to make it happen. He wanted to do something that would leave a lasting impact, not just for Nanny, but for other women who had been forgotten by society. Women who, like her, had been left behind in the rush of life. That evening, Vikram sat down with his team of advisors, determined to put his plans into action. He wanted to create a place where women like Nanny could find safety, warmth, and the dignity they deserved. A place where they could live without fear of being forgotten, without the constant struggle for survival. He envisioned a shelter, a place where women who had been abandoned or left behind could find hope again. He decided to name the shelter Amma, after the name he had called Nanny when he was a child. It was a name that carried with it all the love and respect he had for her. The shelter would offer more than just a roof over their heads. It would provide meals, medical care, education, and emotional support. It would be a place where these women could rebuild their lives just as Nanny had helped him rebuild his when he was a child. "I want to create a place where women can feel safe, where they can rediscover their worth," Vikram told his team. "I want to give them the opportunity to start over, to rebuild their lives just as Nanny rebuilt mine." His team was immediately on board. They began working tirelessly to bring the shelter to life, gathering resources, finding a suitable location, and recruiting the necessary staff. Vikram spared no expense. He wanted the shelter to be a place where these women could feel respected and cared for, a place that would give them the strength to move forward. As the months passed, the shelter began to take shape. It was a beautiful building with spacious rooms, lush gardens, and a warm, inviting atmosphere. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a place to heal. Vikram made sure that everything was perfect, from the comfortable beds to the cozy lounges, from the well-stocked kitchen to the community spaces where the women could gather and support each other. The day the shelter finally opened its doors, Vikram stood at the entrance with Nanny by his side. She was looking frail, but there was a light in her eyes that Vikram hadn't seen in years. As they stood together, watching the first women arrive, he realized that this was the moment that truly brought everything full circle. He had done something meaningful, something that would continue to give long after he was gone. He had created a place of hope, just as Nanny had once been a beacon of hope in his life. "This is for you, Nanny," Vikram whispered, his voice full of emotion. "You taught me what love is. Now I want to pass that love on to others." Nanny smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "You've made me so proud, Beta. I always knew you would do great things, but this is the greatest thing you could ever do." Vikram smiled back, but his eyes were full of tears as well. "No, Nanny, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to do, so many more people to help, and it all started with you." As the women settled into the shelter, Vikram continued to visit regularly. He spent time talking to them, listening to their stories, and helping them get back on their feet. He could see the difference the shelter was making, and it filled him with a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He wasn't just building an empire anymore. He was building something far more important, a legacy of love, compassion, and care. Months later, when the shelter had become a thriving community, Vikram stood in front of a crowd of supporters, giving a speech to celebrate the success of the project. His voice trembled with emotion as he spoke. "I built companies with strategy, but I built myself with her love," he said, looking at Nanny sitting in the front row. "This shelter is my Gift to her and to all the women who need a chance to start over. The crowd applauded, but Vikram didn't care about the praise. What mattered was that Nanny, the woman who had given him everything, had finally received the love and respect she deserved. And that, to Vikram, was the greatest achievement of all. As the sun set that evening, Vikram stood beside Nanny in the garden, holding her hand. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. He had come full circle, and in doing so, he had found the true meaning of wealth. Not in material things, but in the love and care we give to those who matter most.